Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me because I just had some problems with my internet connection. So my name is Andrea Pocic. I would like to welcome everyone, our guests and our viewers at the fourth event of the Documenta discussion series at the Goethe-Institut, Budapest. This discussion series is about Hungarian artists at Documenta from Vasarely to OFF Biennale, and now today we arrived to OFF Biennale. So in a minute, I would like to introduce our guest. But before that, just one very important technical information. So you can listen to this discussion in English in Facebook Live, or you can use the translation option if you join the Zoom, the discussion on Zoom. So then you have to register. This is a very short proceeding. And then after you had registered, you choose the interpretation option and then the Japanese language. So this is the Hungarian translation, and it should work. So first, let me introduce our guest shortly. In alphabetical order, I would like to start with Junghaus, who hasn't arrived yet, but hopefully should arrive very soon. So she's a Hungarian art historian and contemporary art curator. She started in the position of executive director of the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture in September 2017. She has researched and published extensively on the conjunctions of modern and contemporary art with critical theory, with particular reference to issues of cultural difference, colonialism, and minority representation. In recognition of her curatorial activities, she received the Kairos European Cultural Prize from the Alfred Töpfer Stiftung in 2008. In 2013, she founded a gallery in Budapest, Gallery 8, a Roma contemporary art space, and was awarded several times. Our other guest is Farid Rakun, who was trained as an architect at the University of Indonesia and the Cranbrook Academy of Art. And he wears different hats dependent on who is asking. I really like this expression in his CV. So at the moment, he is a visiting lecturer in the architecture department of Universitas Indonesia. And he is also a part of the artists collective, ruangrupa, which is a Jakarta-based collective established in 2000. It's a non-profit organization that strives to support the idea of art within urban and cultural contexts by involving artists and other disciplines such as social sciences, politics, technology, media, and so on, to give critical observation and views towards Indonesian urban contemporary issues. Somogyi is a curator based in Budapest. She has initiated OFF Biennale Budapest in 2014, and since then she's working as a director and as a co-curator at OFF Biennale. From 2021, she is a lecturer at Metropolitan University in Budapest. She used to be the online editor of Art magazine, and before that, curator at Ludwig Museum Budapest, and before that at Trafo, the House of Contemporary Arts in Budapest. The institution she represents, OFF Biennálé, is the largest independent contemporary art event in Hungary, which was founded in 2014 as a grassroots initiative called into life by a small group of art experts. They wanted to create a platform which helps the representatives of contemporary art in Hungary to connect with the audience. The main purpose of OFF Biennale Budapest is to strengthen the local independent art, contemporary art scenes. So that was the introduction of our guest, and I'm just checking, Tima hasn't arrived yet. So as a first question, I would like to ask you to introduce your institutions, the institutions you represent, but in a way that you would point out how it is connected to the center-periphery connections in the local contemporary art scene and internationally. So, as you like, but maybe Heine, you could start.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and the possibility to speak about this collaboration that we are working on. The first thing I would like to point out is a little distinction, and it's actually answering your question. OFF Biennálé, we don't really think of OFF Biennálé as an institution. Institutions are usually established from above by some kind of power. So it is some kind of acknowledgement from seats of power of a certain need, while civil organizations are usually have like a corrective or critical function towards this institutional system, in as much as it is about a small group of people who realize that certain social needs are not fulfilled by the institutional system, and therefore they are willing to join forces and build up a platform to serve those purposes. So we definitely are, legally, structurally, but also we identify with this civil organization model. And that already positions our project in a way. In Hungary, it's really difficult because I don't think that the art system really works in any systemic way. It's kind of very much disjointed, so it's hard to speak about the center and margins. If you look at funding or like how solid the infrastructure that we work with is, then certainly we are marginal and vulnerable and a very, very small organization. If you look at the acknowledgement, even the ones like, generated by the scene itself, like this power list and stuff, then we definitely seem to have an important position in the local scene. Internationally, I think, especially working with the Lumbung, has been a very formative experience for us, a very humbling experience, because as Eastern Europeans, we were kind of, we've been used to always comparing ourselves only to Western Europe, right? And so we always are peripheral, and we are always kind of less and smaller and poorer, and working in this context with the other Lumbung members and having all these conversations and learning about their situation. Certainly, OFF Biennálé is one of the more central organizations, like geopolitically, and certainly one of our context is one of the most solid, most peaceful, most supportive contexts that are available compared to other Lumbung members. So once again, this experience makes us kind of reposition ourselves also mentally, and it's a very good thing, I think.
Thank you. Yes, Farid, please.
Yeah, thank you as well, Andrea, and of course, Hachnalka as well, to connect us with this initiative or this event right now. I think I'll just like follow up with what Hachnalka said. For us, when we thought about documenta from the beginning, we realized the trap of being extracted by something like, you know, documenta, if you can call it a center, but the question is like who's center in documenta, because like for Indonesians, for example, the thing that we had to do when we got this gig was to explain to many people in our ecosystem what documenta is, you know. So maybe it's considered central or huge or influential to certain circles, but to other circles, like our own circles, our own context, it wasn't the case, you know. So when we decided together after thinking as well and making decisions internally in Ruangrupa, back in Jakarta around the end of 2018, we realized that we had to address this trap of being extracted by or exploited by something like Central Europe, Western Europe, or what you call the center maybe, which you're referring to. And then what we decided is actually just to keep on doing what we're doing already. And I think we asked everyone, including OFF Biennale and others, to just like, you know, not make something new for Documenta 15, but like keep on continuing with the trajectory of where everyone was at respectively, and then also how to use this opportunity to engage with Documenta 15 at least, to propel that trajectory further in the future, to sustain it. And then what we also realized that like we're not trying to make a global event, let's say, but with lumbung, which maybe we can discuss it further, what lumbung is and all those kind of stuff, you know. But the way we call what Hachnalka said before as lumbung members, we understood it as not global, but interlocal. So one values that we always ask everyone is like how important is one's practice to their local ecosystem? Is it rooted enough? And then how impactful it is? And then by being part of Documenta, can it also bring something good or sustain something not only to themselves, but also to their ecosystem? And then how to do it? Everyone has different answers to it. And I think we also have to say, because of that we learned a lot, humbled as well, like what borrowing Hachnalka's term, because we got surprised a lot by how creative the answers to those questions can be. And also this lumbung or Documenta 15 is not owned only by Ruangrupa, but also we share, hopefully, like the sense of ownership is also being established to others, not only lumbung members or lumbung artists, but also those maybe in their local ecosystem as well, or local context. Maybe I'll stop it there, in the risk of talking too much, but thank you very, very much.
No, it was fine. Thank you. And now let me greet Tima Junghaus, who has arrived meanwhile, and who was introduced before she arrived. So hello, Tima, and please join to answer the first question, introducing your background institution, area, but in a way that you could place it how it is connected to the center periphery opposition. How could you explain its position like this?
Thank you, Andrea. I apologize for being late. I had to update Zoom, if that's a good alibi for my being late. And I apologize for the colleagues for not hearing the beginning of the discussion. I come from the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture. And this institute is the first transnational institute created for the recognition and respect of Roma arts and culture. Everyone who comes to Reinhardtstrasse in Berlin believes that this is an institute that was established in the late 60s or the early 70s, but it was called to life only in 2017. It's a very hybrid space. We have a contemporary arts space in the front, but the institution was created by the Council of Europe, Open Society Foundations, and our outreach projects are funded by the Federal Foreign Office. At the same time, it is the pilgrimage place of Roma in Europe. So now, for example, when the Roma refugees arrive from the Ukraine to the Hauptbahnhof, they also come to immediately, or they come and see us, because this is there isn't too many actual infrastructure and spaces in Europe for Roma. So it's very important that when we speak about Eriak, it is a space for cultural recognition and the pilgrimage of the community. We are connecting the Roma communities that exist around Europe. We work with Eriak in the largest communities, near Sevilla. These are connecting really peripheries of gigantic cities. In Sevilla, 30,000 Roma in Poligono del Sur. In Skopje, 50,000 of a community in the outskirts of Skopje, in the Shutka. I could speak about Romania, Hungary, where Eriak has organized outreach events. And of course, this is the largest community of Europe. So when we are curating European level projects, it's very important that we are working on the transnational, European and international levels. We are a partner in this prefigurative notion of the Roma Contemporary Art Museum, Roma MoMA, together with OFF Biennale Budapest. And performing this prefigurative museum, Roma MoMA in real space has been a very exciting journey, both from the curatorial perspective and also for the artists and the community and audiences that we engage. I'm just coming actually from the CIMAM discussion where the representatives of CIMAM and ICOM invite Eriak to speak about Roma MoMA as a real collection and a real museum to the representatives of gigantic museums, curators and art historians. So these ironies of life that come with the prefigurative play out in the work. And yes, we are also preparing to support the OFF team, co-curating, bringing the distinguished curators, Ethel Brooks, Daniel Baker, Miguel Angel Vargas, together with the OFF Biennale team to create the collaborative projects at Documenta 15.
Thank you. We will soon go into details of this project. But before that, let us talk a little bit more about the Biennale understandings and the changing understanding or function of Biennales. I've discovered a very interesting symposium I wasn't familiar with before, which was organized in Prague in 2018. And you both were participants, Jaime and Farid. It was titled Unlearning Biennale, and it had very important, it raised very important issues about the changing role, or even more about the need of the changing roles of these huge biennales. So my first question is concerning your participation and your memories about this event, your presentation or whatever, or the sorry, or your meetings, or anything which you find you judge important in this context of documenta. So please, Heine, could you start?
Sure. Yeah, it was indeed a very important event. This is where Farid and me and my colleague Bori met for the first time. So it was the beginning of this collaboration, and also the beginning, I think, of a lot of conversations that are relevant for this edition of Documenta. But it was also important in another respect, because that was the first occasion that the members of today's East Europe Biennial Alliance met for the first time. And the idea of such an alliance was born. Just right after, like the next day after the conference, we had breakfast together and started to hatch this idea of collaborating. And the reason for that, and the reason to organize that symposium in the first place, was exactly what you are asking about, Andy, to rethink the mainstream model of biennales and to make sense of it for our respective contexts, I guess. And that was the beginning of the Czech transit team deliberating the idea of starting a biennale in Prague. And I think this is very telling about these kind of new methodologies, is that they started by organizing not only the conference was not only international, where they brought together colleagues with some kind of experiences with alternative biennial structures, but also the other leg of the symposium was very much local. They invited participants or like stakeholders, colleagues, artists from the local art scene, asking them to share their ideas of if such a biennial would make sense for them, and if so, in what ways. And I actually admired the constructive criticism and the honesty and also creativity of the local respondents. I think it was at least as interesting and important as the international contributions, which are always like, we share our experiences, we explained how we had done the OFF Biennálé that far. But I think that was the real stake of that event, and this is coming to the point, because I think what connects us in the alliance and many of these new biennials is what I think Farid already mentioned a little bit, that our activities are very much anchored in the local context. So the goal of establishing a new biennial is not to join this globalist international flow of various biennales where, like the most interesting international positions are shown together under some concept of some international curator, and then everybody goes home. Rather, it's a much more rooted model of working with the local scene in the long run. Obviously, having colleagues from abroad and having an international prospect is an important part of that, but the priority is always to do something that is relevant and useful in the local context. So yeah, I think I answered your question more or less.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Farid, how can you recall your experiences in this context?
Thank you very much for the question, and forcing me to recall about that, because at that moment, I think, because a lot of things have been said by Ajnalka, but what I recalled was Vit Hafranek, one of the people from Transit, at that moment just finished co-curating Jakarta Biennial, which was, well, basically he was working with me as managing director of Jakarta Biennial at that moment, a position which I no longer hold, and Jakarta Biennial is very specific. Maybe I can introduce you a bit later, but about Jakarta Biennale later. But it was very nice for myself because, like, you know, of course, we met OFF Biennale for the first time at that moment, and then other biennials from the Eastern European part. And then I realized how bottom up a biennial, like biennials could be. And then, of course, it's nothing new, but how political as well, how strongly positioned every initiatives, at least at that moment, were, and then how a biennial could be, you know. Everyone had different answers as well on that level. What I could say is like that has been useful for us was the understanding of like for myself, in my experience doing Jakarta Biennale, it's a bit different than the rest, maybe because most of them, if not all of them, were the founders of a biennial. But for our case, Jakarta Biennale was founded in the 70s already, owned by others, but then it got resuscitated. And then we, as like, you know, it's not the Ruangrupa project, but a lot of us from Ruangrupa were involved in one way or another in many other different capacities, sometimes for quite a long time, up until 2017 from 2009. So several editions we were involved. And then for us, it's a place to learn without learning how to do Jakarta Biennale's editions with its different capacities, from artistic directors, art handlers even, you know, managing it, also curating it, all those kind of stuff. We would never, we cannot imagine we would be able to do something like Documenta 15. But what we shared, at least at that moment, if I remember correctly, that how we kind of like, it was useful at that moment. It's no longer useful right now, but like how we could become parasitic towards an institution that's already there, as you know, as actors, not necessarily ruangrupa, but like having two legs in different places, one from ruangrupa, but also Jakarta Biennale at that moment, and then how we could take it, make it ours for a certain given time, and then learn so many things. To make an international art event is one. To manage, again, like to manage, to curate, to position ourselves in an international art scene by making something as a that's called biennial, which has a lot of burden as well as a term. And then yeah, and then after that, this type of events, let's say, the nice thing is like when it got sustained, the relationships. So making new friends, and then hopefully some of them, maybe not all, but some of them, the relationship stayed, which has been proven by our relationship to OFF. Then I came, like they invited me to Budapest to understand their practice more. Then through that, we realized that there's a lot of things that we could learn from, the resistance towards national funding, and how to handle precarity, and how we can understand sharing resources further. That's also why the interest from our side to learn from OFF Biennale through Lumbung or Documenta 15. I'll stop there. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I think we can return to this issue later a bit, because I think there are real parallels between lumbung ideas and especially the first OFF Biennale 2015, but we can come back to this issue later. Now I would return to Tina, asking about the function or the understanding or the importance of biennales in contemporary Roma culture, and especially these large, very important events, like, for example, the Venice Biennale, or at this moment, the documenta and the documenta participation.
Yes, I can completely actually relate to what Hainaka and Farid just said, because, you know, in the core of the Roma being and cultural practice, there's very much this situatedness within the local communities. And also there is, when it comes to the art world as such, we observe the happenings and the events of the art world with great criticism and resistance, and often with often with this sense of sarcasm when it comes to large events. But we have a very important practice of assembling in the public space. And just like for the initiatives, that have happened, like the Prague Biennale is gathering curators who then continue collaborating together in an alternative way, providing different access to different narratives, critique on the existing art practice. This is also very much in the core of the general Roma practice of arts and cultural politics. So we fit very nicely into the OFF scope, and also I believe into the Documenta 15. Kassel also has a large Roma community, and regarding the biennales, we could say that Roma, from the Roma perspective, we conclude that it is impossible to change the art world. The racism, the structural racism, the procedures, the protocols are so exclusive, racist, and discriminatory towards minorities, and especially colored minorities. And also small nations or new nations that have formed after the 19th century, that we are basically organizing now. That's also a Roma Moma event at the Venice Biennale, which is saying goodbye to the Biennale in a rather dramatic way. So while we have an artist at the Polish pavilion of Roma origin, so an artist, Małgorzata Mirga, is representing Poland at the Polish pavilion in the Giardini, which is historical, because since 1895, there hasn't been a Roma artist inside the Giardini. So this is a celebration. And apart from the Polish pavilion, we have a Roma pavilion. I'm not even allowed to say pavilion in public. So it's a Roma collateral event at the Venice Biennale. This practice is unsustainable. There's a discriminatory fee, collateral fee that I don't think any Roma organization can afford to pay in the future. So returning to your question, I think that, for example, the Venice Biennale, if you ask specifically, is doomed because it cannot innovate itself without the voices that provide a more heterogeneous and correct reading of what our world is today. And other innovative biennales, such as the OFF Biennale, Guangzhou Biennale, I could continue, but there's no sense that, the Farid's Jakarta Biennale. So there are innovative initiatives which give us an opportunity to read the word and see the word in its current form.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I see. I think now we arrived to the point where we could explain in more details to the audience, and especially connecting it to what just Tima said, the main concept of Documenta 15, the lumbung concept. Let me tell you that I really enjoyed reading the description on ruangrupa website of the conception, since it was a bit reminding me to the wonderful theories of Clifford Geertz, anthropologist, as he was explaining several experienced near terms of a certain ethnic group, because how the Indonesian terms were involved in the description, I found it very, very interesting. So the central term lumbung became, I think, quite famous now, at least for those who are interested in documenta 15. So first, I would like to ask Farid to talk about it a little bit, and then Heini and Tima to join to the interpretation understanding for themselves of the term.
Thank you very much for the question, Andrea, and then opening up as well, because I would love to hear it from Timea and Hajnal as well about the interpretation in words, you know. In practice, I think we've been experiencing it, but I think in words, it would be refreshing to revisit it, especially in this crunch time right now, few weeks before the opening. For us, lumbung, lumbung is something vernacular in Indonesia, like it's a shortcut, let's say, when we started using it, because we started using it between ourselves back home in Jakarta. And then it's a shortcut to refer to what we were experimenting with starting, I think, like in 2016 or something, 2016, 2017, when we gang up together with other collectives from Jakarta and then try to share a lot of things together. Space is one, knowledge is another, human resources as well, rent, fees, and all those kind of stuff. And then in order to make everyone just like, you know, in 2 seconds understand what we're trying to do, lumbung became a very useful term because everyone understood back home. And then when Documenta was asking us whether we were interested to have an expression of interest, then we were thinking together all those kind of stuff, and then maybe this experimentation, which we were still doing and we are still doing obviously right now, became kind of like a good entry point to invite Documenta back to whether they're interested, instead of us proposing something, especially particularly for Documenta 15. We thought like the strategy would be nice to invite Documenta back to our journey, no? Which finally worked, at least in our case this time. And then it's not, from the beginning, we realized that it's not a theme, that it's a working method, and then it's open. It's not a theme in a sense, like we're not working or extending the invitation to OFF in order to prove our concept that what OFF is doing is lumbung, you know, for example. But it's much more like if others who we are interested in learning from, how their notion of sharing resources and precarity again, and then how to survive, how to sustain in different kind of challenges. We thought it's enough for us to extend our invitations and imagine together how an edition of Documenta could be, let's say. So up until now, we're still curious in a lot of places, because as OFF Biennale showed, for example, they keep on extending the invitations as well. We extend the invitation to others, and then others extend the invitations to even their ecosystem further, you know. So a lot of that power relation that curator or artistic directors have, and it's not always easy either, that we release it a bit, or maybe a lot, I don't know. But the nice thing about that is like we are also excited and curious, not only nervous, but excited and curious. How could the 100 days be, let's say? So if you ask me, it has been very, very valuable, this learning process so far. And then lumbung, as you said, refers, just like going back to your main question, lumbung refers to a building and also a practice to store a lot of things together. Usually it harvests from the field. Every village has one or even several lumbungs, at least one. Back in the days when agricultural reality is still the majority in Indonesia, and then it's centralized in the, usually like in spatial design, it's centralized in the middle of the village. It's owned by a lot of people, and then it's also a place or a space or a building that can be used for public use, domestic use, as well as storage use. So it's kind of like as metaphor that we kind of like squeezed further because of documenta, of an experience of documenta, let's say. We squeeze further that the metaphor is actually also can be useful so far to explain how our approach is also having at least those three as well, not only exhibition, but also public space, domestic space, so people can live. It can be considered as living rooms, many living rooms, like the last edition of Biennial also have that notion, as well as like storage of maybe knowledge, harvest that can be shared with the bigger public, let's say. So like a short version of it, hopefully it's not too confusing, because a lot of us, of course, like have different stage of confusions all the time, including ourselves, relating to lumbung and how to practice it. But hopefully it started to enlighten the process we're going through up until now.
Yeah, I think it's a great challenge, and I can imagine that it is developing during the process. So I would really love to see the process itself, and not just the results. But I think we can see them through the news about the participation of the lumbung members. For example, OFF Biennálé. So what about your understanding, Heini? The lumbung understanding.
Which level of confusion?
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is just so much to say, like listening to Farid and like what our take has been on that so far. I mean, first of all, and we don't have time here to speak about it, but definitely like everything that we learned so far in the conversations informs our way of working here at home. So we've learned a lot, and we would like to implement, some of those ideas that seem to be relevant for our context to change our working methods and our collaborations, and the financial model, and like all these things, how to work with other organizations, and how to build a local lumbung, and sustainability and all these questions. So that's like one big package that we've got from this so far. I also have to mention that it has been really frustrating that COVID just hit in right after we started this. So, the initial idea would have been that we actually get to know each other like personally, and like visit and understand each other's practices. So we expect a lot from this 100 days in terms of like really finally meeting all these people who've been in touch with for the past 2 years through Zoom, and finally really start having conversations and, you know, hanging out and being inspired by each other. So that's, yeah, brackets closed. In terms of the concept for documenta, there have been lots of things that we could resonate with. Obviously, collective practices, working together, sharing, but also play, like the role of, you know, just the sense of humor and play, and unproductive creativity in the sense of unproductive in the sense of like nothing tangible, marketable being the result of that, right? So I think like these ideas really translate into this playground project that I will shortly introduce. But also, you know, the general kind of implicit or very much explicit actually goal of this edition to give center stage to those voices also mentioned by Timea that have been marginalized, that can enrich the conversation with different experiences, different knowledges, different understandings of what's happening around us, what has happened and what will happen, what could happen with us. So in one, you know, very fashionable term, obviously it's about decolonization in this edition of the documenta. And coming from Eastern Europe, we thought that one of the relevant ways of contributing to this conversation could be to invite and to start a collaboration with artists and art experts of Roma origin. Because as Timea mentioned before, the Romas have lived with us for hundreds and hundreds of years, and here is the largest ethnic minority in Europe, and still not only their institutional representation is very weak, to say the least, but in general, they are still facing exclusion, and their experience and their knowledge has not been not been part of the mainstream discourses, let's say. So, you know, approaching documenta or entering documenta as this super visible stage of contemporary culture, we thought that this would be one. But like the invitation by ruangrupa of representing our ways of working, our activities, translated into presenting two projects that we have worked with for years before. So Roma MoMA, we started, I think, early 2019 in collaboration with ERIAC. So it seemed like a natural continuation of what we've been doing anyways. So not doing anything new, as Farid said, but just to kind of have a new stage of this project that will continue after documenta, that we can also speak about later. And the other project, the playground project, is a continuation of the main theme of the second OFF Biennálé that was entitled Gaudiopolis, and that reflected on the story of a children's republic, an orphanage that was organized by Gábor Spéló after the Second World War here in Budapest. And that edition that a lot with the idea of kids and education and play and healing, and also you know, care and accepting people, and the role of art in all of this. So the project that we call Playground right now is pretty much a continuation of that, and it's also maybe a last aspect, introducing our ecosystem. Both of these projects gave us the possibility to present artists and colleagues and organizations that we've been in touch for a while and would like to be in touch in the future. So it's also a possibility to further those collaborations and those conversations. And I think it's a great opportunity, especially in the case of Roma MoMA, to be in documenta and to meet all these other stories and contexts and artists and colleagues, because the continuation should include some of those. I'm speaking about, you know, representatives of other small communities, nations without a nation state, other marginalized ethnic groups that struggle in their own context. So Roma MoMA should not be an exclusively Roma project, obviously. It should be a platform to share all these experiences. And I think being in Documenta, meeting with all these other art groups and collectives gives a possibility to start this continuation of the project that becomes more interlocal, let's say.
Thanks. What about you, Tina? What is your lumbung experience? The most important features?
I mean, you know, we are one. When we speak about Roma MoMA, OFF Biennálé, and the ERIAC team and the artists, we are one. It is an alliance of thinkers and artists and the institutions that we bring together, and the blog that's also available on the ERIAC website, which has over 35 contributors already since 2009, theorizing and introducing the art practice that we can call, or around the notion of Roma art. I would add to what Heini said, a few points that I see, but I have to invite Heini to feel free to critique or correct if she feels that this is too wild. But I think one of the core themes in our collaboration is this coming together, and also the artworks are dispersed in the space of Documenta. So they are brought together by a diagram on the floor designed by Daniel Baker, and the whole idea of the being on the road and arriving to the assembly together is coded into both Roma history and also in this presentation, this creative presentation of Roma MoMA. And the second point is more to ruangrupa's notion of hanging out, as also a critique of this Western productivity, which is very much, let's admit, we Europeans know that this is a Roma exercise, but also because of course, the absolutely disgusting and oppressive politics of financial disadvantage in that and the dirt road villages. But we Roma know that the way out of apathy in these locations is the company of each other and the creativity. And these are the notions that are also central to the Roma project, offering each other company, belonging, and creativity that will help us survive the apathy and the unbearable politics of the Roma experience. And the third, which is very often the case of Roma being present in the art scene, is this idea of radical materiality. We know that the Roma history in Europe is a history of larger and smaller genocides. We mostly refer to the Holocaust of 500,000 Roma killed, and the complete cultural heritage destroyed, and even currently inaccessible. Whatever we have is not in Roma property. So when we bring this materiality, it is also radical politics, and I'm looking forward to performing this radical politics with OFF Biennálé.
Maybe just two little notes so why Timia said that the works are dispersed. So, you know, this is why she said that most people think that ERIAC was established in the 60s or 70s. So it's a very interesting double task that we have, because on the one hand, it is very important to create a platform and to put energy, organized long-term energy into, you know, making these practices visible. Let's put it simple now. On the other hand, creating institutions on an ethnic basis is certainly something that was very much in use in the 20th century, but now most of the young artists cannot really identify with that. So the task is double. We have to construct these or perform these institutions, but we also have to deconstruct it. So this is why the solution has been to have like a central room where this being part of Friderizianum, which will function as a school, it's going to be kind of an educative, kind of very informative room explaining certain major themes that are relevant to understand Roma culture. And then the contemporary positions, the invited contemporary artists are not part of this kind of physical unity. So we didn't want to have like one place within Friderizianum, which is the Roma MoMA. Instead, we wanted to integrate these artistic positions into the general exhibition of Documenta 15. So this is why the contemporary voices will be in various locations in Friderizianum, it seems. So not in other buildings, but all of them, I think, so far in Friderizianum. And obviously, we will have ways of informing the audience how to locate those positions, but certainly we didn't want to kind of segregate them. This is one, and maybe another little thing is that which also kind of embraces ideas introduced by ruangrupa for this edition, is that we will have a little street festival co-organized with a local organization, Street Bolzer. They work with migrant communities and especially with kids. Their main method is street football to introduce the kids, like how to accept rules, but also how to write rules together and how to get to know the city actually through these tournaments of street football. Anyways, they want to do a street festival, and we will collaborate on that. And this will also give us possibility to kind of engage the Roma community in what we are doing, to have like a connection with people who might not go to Friderizianum, might not feel invited to Friderizianum, but this collaboration with Street Bolzer will hopefully give us the possibility to animate this register, or like to realize this potential within the project as well.
That's very, very interesting, I think. And I just wanted to ask you, any of you, about it, but especially maybe Farid, how the Documenta 15 is integrated in the local events, because that was a very important effort and challenge from the beginning, from the preparations, to connect all sorts of levels, Documenta 15 with the Kassel city itself.
Yeah, I'm actually right now sitting in Ruru House, for example. This is Ruru stands for ruangrupa, and then it is a space that kind of like a testing space for us. First, to land into Kassel, because we like to be also in Kassel, one of our localities right now, besides those who we invite, including Hungary and through OFF Biennale, of course, but Kassel is one of them as well, no? And then how to land into this new context, at least for us, it's new, without being a spaceship, as you said, because if we said localities is important, to be locally rooted is something as a value, then Kassel is one of those locals that we want to connect with. So the one way we can do it, learning from our experience beforehand, is to open a space, not exactly a programmed space, so we don't compete with what's already here in Kassel, but it's again like just to make it easier to understand, like a shortcut. It's a living room that we open for Kassel. The original intention is to open it for 7 days a week, so public can come. We don't have to program, but if anyone, like a lot of other people, have ideas how to use this space, because this is a space that we can share further, that we can open it. But of course, like what Hachanalka said previously about the COVID challenge, it has been proven that it's impossible to do so. But still, the Ruru House is still here. It makes it possible as well for us to meet other people, other initiatives, Street Bolzer, which OFF Biennale is working with, is one of them. And then what we'd like to think about is like when we come to a new context, it's like we should not compete is one with what's already there. Maybe what we can do is to boost their visibility if we have the capacity to do so, by giving space, by giving time, by giving other resources as well. We also have to not invent anything new, let's say. We work we try to understand at least. Not everything can be absorbed. Of course, we also have limitations, but how to operate within a given context. And then the answers to it became relationship with other invitations from different locales is one, but also and this is a question that we cannot answer for now. It has to be answered by the locals itself, like by Kassel itself somehow. It's like whether it can sustain like what we have started this time with through Documenta 15, whether they want to sustain it, or maybe together with us. It doesn't matter if they don't want us to be part of that sustainability idea, but it would be nice to hear. But again, I think we can figure out the answer to that, or figure out that there is already an answer to that when the 100 days has opened, at least, you know. So the proof is in the pudding. So whether it's tempting enough for people to keep on eating that dish, let's say. So yeah, hopefully it answers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the projects of OFF Biennale, the other projects, for example, the playground is very much a concept which Farid has just described. I mean, how it is rooted, embedded in the city spaces. Could you tell us about it, Hani?
Yes, thank you. I was a little worried that we won't have time for that. Yes, so for the playground project, we have a really nice, very special location. It's an ex-boat house on the river, on the bank of the river Fulda. Fulda runs through the city of Kassel, and there are actually quite many boat houses on both banks. Most of them are in use, but this one, fortunately, is like changing owner, so we could use it as a site for an art project. And we really kind of fell in love with it because it's a place, you know, with the water, with the grass, with the trees, where you feel like just taking a little rest, and like maybe, you know, in this crazy walks that you have for 3 days in Documenta trying to see everything, this is certainly a place where you feel like staying a little while. And I think this was also an inspiration, one of the inspirations for working with the site of the playground, which is a very interesting idea in itself, because on one hand, this is the site where you first introduce kids to how to collaborate, how to be in a social setting. And certainly the constructions there, you know, the toys and everything, they kind of prescribe what to do. But the playground is also obviously always the place where you rewrite these rules, where you kind of find a way to hack the system. And when you learn to do something together. And so it's a place for kind of freer imagination as well. And so most of the works play with this idea, or like work with this idea of this situation where you collaborate, where you again are not productive in the Western sense, but are still creative. And you know, it's a little bit like rehearsing for real life, which is a quality that art and play certainly share. So it's an activity where you kind of can rehearse, when you can find new ways that can employed in reality. And it's also something that like quality that dreaming shares to a certain degree, or like even less rational way. So dreaming and the possibility of dreaming together is also a theme that appears a lot in these works. And this is also a very important project for us because it gave us the possibility to produce new works by Hungarian artists. So maybe quickly the names, because they might be familiar for the Hungarian audience, is Random Routines, which is Tamás Kaszás and Christian Kristóf. It's Ádám Kokás, Ilona Németh, and the Architecture Uncomfortable workshop, which consists of two architects, Dénes Gici and Lukács Szederkényi. And then we have Eva Kotyatkova, who is also an artist who has been close to us for many years. And she is developing a new project as well. And finally, last but not least, is Recetas Urbanas, which is a Spanish group of architects who work in like collaborative ephemeral architectural constructions. And both Recetas Urbanas and Eva Kotyatkova are working with local kids. So there's going to be collaboration with Kaszás school children in both cases. And in the case of Recetas Urbanas, the plan is that the construction that is being built is going to be adapted to their school afterwards. So they will get something on the schoolyard out of this collaboration.
Yeah,
and finally, sorry, just like with one sentence to mention it, that we spoke a little bit about the last OFF Biennale and the living room. So one of the projects that grew out of the living room that was inspired by the lumbung was an open editorial process, so a kind of collaborative process of putting together a publication that is in a certain way like an associative cloud above the third OFF Biennale and all the themes, all the narratives, all the issues that were taken up by that edition. It also collects the voices of many of the contributors of the third OFF Biennale. And finally, we completed it with certain contributions that are about our documenta projects. So this publication that is entitled on the same page will be also presented or present available as part of documenta.
Yes, Farid, did you want to add something? I just...
No, not really. I was just like, it was. Thank you, Hachnalka, for explaining that project, because then I'll use that as well in the future presentations that I have. But it was really nicely presented. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think it will be really exciting for the lookers as well, not just the broad expert documenta audience. Meanwhile, let me encourage our audience to ask questions, because we have a little time left. So they can ask questions in Facebook chat or here in Zoom as well. So after this, let me return to your curatorial experiences. So I know that you used to work in collaboration many times before, but and yet, how does the lumbung experience affect your curatorial practice and understanding of collaboration? Any of you can answer.
Maybe I can start if no one minds. But yeah, the curatorial experience, it's kind of like tough for us to understand what we're doing, whether it's curatorial enough or not. What we know is this is a continuation of what we've been what we've done so far, and then of course this is also a privileged position right now. Challenging, of course, but also privilege. I have to underline, because we can experiment certain things that we could not before, like how to introduce even like we're working with many collectives, but even between those collectives, we want to push collectivity even further. How to collaborate between the collectives, you know, all those kind of stuff. It wasn't. We experimented with it, of course, beforehand in Indonesia, but then in this interlocal setting, let's say, then it has proven to be very fruitful for us. Again, in the sense of like the surprises that it has given us. It has never been boring, you know, because a lot of the things or ideas that came up from that process, we would never think ourselves. We would never think or imagine that it could be done that way. And then how to maybe to also refer to relations between institution and or different type of institutions, institution like Documenta and institution like Ruangrupa, you know. Then I think like luckily enough so far, again, not without challenges and not without conflicts, but we realize it from the beginning, from the get-go, and then so far the negotiation has been has been happening without making any of us feeling that we're a loser, you know, or but of course it's negotiations. So none of the parties can be like, you know, can be saying that we're winning or we're losing and all those kind of stuff. But this is again like a practice of being together and co-organizing, let's say, for a lack of better word. But for those who curate better or like knows how to curate, how to properly curate, then I'll pass the mic to either Hacnalka or Timea.
The last curatorial project that was not collaborative for me was in like early 2015. So ever since, everything that resembled curatorial was done in various constellations of people for me. And well, and it's also more and more about creating a frame for others to do curatorial work than curating myself. So for us, again, being invited basically as a curatorial team to Documenta was an interesting challenge in that sense too, that the 6 of us got to work as curators while there is an organization that provides the frames. But yeah, so there is a double challenge, I think, with collective curator and curating, and certainly I'm just very, very briefly, one is yes, that the inner dynamics, the inner politics are very delicate, and definitely there are stronger voices, and there are, you know, more sensitive voices and positions, and you don't want to be too much, but you also, yeah, you have to create a situation where everyone feels that their ideas are respected. But on the other hand, you know, collective curating can also end up in something really bland because of all those compromises. So it can just create a middle ground where all the edges and all the, you know, real excitements are somehow sacrificed for the sake of arriving to a common decision where everyone feels more or less happy, but not really happy. So that was actually the reason why we ended up doing 2 projects, even though it's really, again, beyond normal and beyond the frames that we were offered. But we didn't want to curate something, the 6 of us together, so it's 2 smaller groups now, and actually we are exploring how that goes. But yeah, what is good about it is certainly when people with really different knowledge come together, and if really everyone can put into the project what they have, and so we arrive at something that is much more than what we could have done individually. And I really hope that in both cases this will be the situation. I am part of the Roma MoMA group, so I definitely can say that this is the case for Roma MoMA. So that's definitely an advantage. By it's worth to take on all the risk of doing that.
Yes, Tima, would you like to add something?
I can further complicate if you wish. If this wasn't complex already enough, then comes the whole, Eriak brings, of course, additional Roma members into the already existing Roma MoMA structure, who also have their own identity politics as individuals, and they belong to other organizations, and all this comes together and becomes a very important topic within our own collaboration. Because if we are doing effective institutional critique, then we have to confront the psychology of working together as Roma and non-Roma, working with artists who are of Roma origin, but don't want to be Roma artists, working with artists who are of Roma origin, and they have a very radical politics about Roma nationhood and Roma identity politics, and also us as a curatorial team processing this, creating the atmosphere of it is safe to discuss this together, and it is completely natural that we clash these in our meetings, whatever meetings we call them. I don't know if this is any longer part of curating or therapy or club activities, but it is certainly productive from the sense of our humanity and the sense of our working together in the future for a better art world. And I don't like these big words, but I don't know why I said this, sorry.
Yeah, I think it seems like it. I mean, the whole structure of Documenta 15 with all the lumbung parts, so not just the lumbung members, but all these layers like the lumbung kiosk and gallery and press and whatever, which unfortunately we haven't got time left to talk about, but I encourage everyone to get informed about all these layers and parts through the Documenta 15 website and the ruangrupa newsletter, whatever. So unfortunately, we are at the end of our discussion. I would like to ask you if you want to add anything important we haven't talked about during the discussion, then please feel free to add.
If I may, I just want to say thank you and give credits actually to also the effort to translate, like the translator available tonight for us, because language and translation has been also a contested but important, very important practice in also lumbung building so far. And then we realized how if we want to be true to ourselves and what we're trying to do, then translation and language is a very fertile ground to take. So thank you for that. And also because you said, Andrea, nicely as well before that some information has been also nicely presented in Documenta website, also in easy read and all those kind of stuff. So at least I can give credit to the team over here, because we would never be able to do it as ruangrupa ourselves. And then thank you very, very much for having me. And it's been nice to talk to Hachinalka and Timea and you, of course, Andrea. That's it from me. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe to continue in this spirit, I just wanted to say that we started 8 years ago, really like from scratch. It was 7 people, and then a lot of other people joined. And I just wanted to say that us going to Documenta is the result of all these collaborations. Really, it's not something that came from any straight structures. There was no political will or public funding or whatsoever. It was really just the effort and the energy of so many people. So we are the scene, and I just really hope that this success and this possibility, even though obviously it concerns directly only a small number of people, but would feel as a success that is a collective success, in the sense that it is possible to build up such a project and make it visible also in a scope that is much wider than our little reality in here.
Yes, yes.
Small footnote, Andrea, thank you for moderation. Also, thank you for the translation and for the Goethe-Institut for bringing us together. We hope to see all the colleagues also from the Goethe-Institut and the audience who watched us in Kassel at the opening.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I'm really glad that you were able to join the discussion. And let me wish you happy Documenta 15. I'm going to open this bottle of beer now and wish you good health and a lot of lumbung success, whatever it means. Thank you again for coming. And thank you for the audience joining us. And have a nice evening.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.